Life often takes us on unexpected journeys, guiding us through detours that seem frustrating at first, but ultimately lead us to where we're meant to be. Today, I want to share a powerful story about a man whose carefully planned life was disrupted by what appeared to be a series of unfortunate events, only to discover that these disruptions were actually divine interventions. Dr. Daniel Carter was not just any doctor. At 50 years old, he had built a reputation that preceded him across medical circles worldwide. His name was synonymous with excellence, innovation, and groundbreaking research. With his salt and pepper hair always perfectly styled, his tailored suits that spoke of wealth without being ostentatious, and his stern expression that rarely broke into a smile, he commanded respect wherever he went. On this particular morning, Daniel rushed out of his five-star hotel, checking his watch impatiently. His driver held the door of a sleek black Mercedes open as he slid into the back seat, immediately opening his laptop to review his presentation one last time. He was heading to an international medical conference where he was the keynote speaker, an honor reserved for only the most distinguished in the field. "Airport, please. And take the expressway. I can't afford to be late," he instructed, barely looking up from his screen. The journey to the airport was smooth, and Daniel arrived with just enough time to clear security and board his flight. As he settled into his first-class seat, he finally allowed himself to relax. Everything was proceeding according to plan, just as he liked it. Control was something Daniel valued above all else, in his surgeries, in his research, and especially in his personal life. The flight attendant offered him a glass of champagne, which he accepted with a polite nod. Opening his laptop again, he began reviewing his speech one more time. The future of cardiovascular interventions, a topic he had researched extensively. Tomorrow, hundreds of medical professionals would gather to hear his insights, and several medical journals had already requested copies of his presentation for publication. But as the plane began taxiing toward the runway, Daniel noticed a sky darkening outside his window. What had been a clear morning was rapidly transforming into an ominous grey canvas. Thick, heavy clouds rolled in, and soon, raindrops began pelting against the aircraft's windows. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I regret to inform you that we've received word of severe thunderstorms ahead on our flight path. For safety reasons, we are unable to proceed to our destination at this time. We will be diverting to the nearest airport until conditions improve." Daniel's jaw tightened. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not when everything had been so meticulously planned. He checked his watch. The conference was scheduled to begin in 6 hours. If the delay was short, he might still make it. But as they landed at the small regional airport, the situation only worsened. The storm had intensified, grounding all flights indefinitely. The airline staff informed passengers that they couldn't provide any estimates for when flights would resume. Daniel paced the small airport terminal, his frustration mounting with each passing minute. He tried calling the conference organizers, but the reception was poor, and the call kept dropping. Finally, a fellow passenger approached him. "Excuse me, aren't you Dr. Carter? I recognized you from the medical journal covers." Daniel nodded curtly, not in the mood for small talk. "I'm Dr. Sharma. I was also heading to the conference," the man continued. "Listen, I've checked with the staff, and it seems we're only about 3 hours away by road. If we take a taxi, we could still make it in time for your keynote." Daniel considered this. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than missing the conference entirely. "Thank you," he said, his voice softening slightly. "That's actually helpful information." Together they headed outside where a line of taxis waited. Most drivers were reluctant to make the journey in such severe weather, but one man agreed. Michael was his name, a taxi driver in his 60s with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. His face bore the marks of a life lived outdoors, weathered but gentle. "I know these roads well," Michael assured them. "I've been driving for 40 years. If anyone can get you there safely, it's me." Dr. Sharma decided to wait for the weather to clear, but Daniel, determined not to miss his speaking engagement, climbed into Michael's taxi. "Drive as quickly as safely possible," Daniel instructed, settling into the back seat. "I have an important presentation to deliver." Michael nodded, pulling away from the curb. "I'll do my best, sir, but this storm is one of the worst I've seen in years." For the first hour, they made decent progress despite the rain. Daniel kept checking his watch and his phone, calculating arrival times and sending emails to the conference organizers. But as they continued, the rain intensified. Visibility decreased dramatically, and the roads became increasingly difficult to navigate. After another 30 minutes of crawling along, Michael cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, I hate to say this, but I think we might be off course. The storm has covered the usual landmarks, and the GPS signal keeps cutting out." Daniel felt a surge of anger but suppressed it. Getting angry wouldn't change their situation. "Just find somewhere safe where we can wait out the worst of this storm," he said, his voice tight with controlled frustration. They drove slowly for another 20 minutes, the world outside nothing but sheets of grey rain and occasional flashes of lightning. Finally, Michael spotted a faint light in the distance. "Look there," he said, pointing. "That might be a house. Perhaps they'll let us wait inside until the storm passes." With few options available, Daniel agreed. Michael carefully navigated the taxi down what appeared to be a narrow dirt road, now turned to mud. They pulled up beside a small, humble cottage with a single light glowing in the window. Michael knocked on the door, rain soaking him instantly. After a moment, it opened, revealing an elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a simple bun. Despite her obvious age, she must have been at least 70. Her eyes were bright and alert, and her smile was warm and welcoming. "Oh my," she said, taking in their drenched appearance. "Please come in out of this dreadful weather." They stepped inside gratefully. The cottage was small but clean and tidy. A fire burned in a small hearth, casting a warm glow throughout the main room. What immediately caught Daniel's attention, however, was a small bed in the corner where a young boy lay, his face pale and his breathing labored. The elderly woman, who introduced herself as Rose, offered them towels to dry off. "I don't have much, but you're welcome to stay until the storm passes. Would you like some tea to warm yourselves?" Michael accepted gratefully, but Daniel declined, his mind still on the conference. "Do you have a telephone I could use? My cell phone has no reception here." Rose smiled apologetically. "I'm afraid not, dear. We don't have a telephone, and electricity is spotty at best during storms like this. We're quite isolated here." Daniel tried to hide his dismay. "How long do these storms usually last?" "Hard to say," Rose replied, glancing out the window. "Sometimes hours, sometimes a day or more. But don't worry, everything happens as it should. There's a reason for all things." Daniel resisted the urge to argue with her philosophy. Instead, his gaze drifted back to the boy in the corner. His doctor's instincts were automatically assessing the child. Shallow breathing, pallor, slight cyanosis around the lips. "Your grandson?" he asked, nodding toward the boy. Rose's face softened with love and concern. "Yes, that's my Liam. He's 8 years old, and all I have left in this world. His parents, my daughter and son-in-law, died in an accident 2 years ago." She moved to the boy's bedside, gently stroking his forehead. "He's been sick for months now. The local doctor says it's his heart, but they don't have the equipment or expertise to help him here. They say he needs to see a specialist in the city." Daniel approached the bed, his professional curiosity piqued despite himself. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the boy. Rose nodded eagerly. "Are you a doctor?" "I am," Daniel replied, already examining the child. He checked Liam's pulse, listened to his breathing, and gently palpated his abdomen. The symptoms were consistent with congenital heart disease, possibly a ventricular septal defect that had gone untreated. "Has he been seen by a cardiologist?" Daniel asked. Rose shook her head sadly. "The nearest one is in the city, many miles from here. I've been saving every penny, but it's not enough for the journey, let alone the treatment. So I pray every day for a miracle." She looked at Daniel with eyes full of hope. "I've heard of a famous doctor named Daniel Carter. They say he's the best heart doctor in the country, perhaps the world. I pray that somehow, someday we might find a way to take Liam to see him." Daniel froze, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. He looked at the frail boy, then at the elderly woman, whose faith had never wavered despite her hardships. He glanced at Michael, who was watching the scene unfold with quiet interest. "Mother," Daniel said softly, "my name is Dr. Daniel Carter." Rose's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? But how? Why would someone like you be here, in our little village, in this storm?" Daniel himself was struggling to comprehend the coincidence. Or was it something more? "My flight was diverted because of the storm. Then the taxi got lost, and now I'm here." Rose's eyes filled with tears as she clasped her hands together. "It's a miracle," she whispered. "All these months I've been praying for God to send Dr. Carter to send and help Liam. And here you are." God works in mysterious ways. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something shift within him. The frustration of his disrupted plans suddenly seemed trivial compared to what was happening in this moment. Here was a child who needed exactly the expertise he possessed, and a grandmother whose faith had somehow manifested the very miracle she had been praying for. "Let me examine him properly," Daniel said, his voice now gentle and determined. For the next hour, Daniel conducted a thorough examination of Liam using the limited tools available. His diagnosis confirmed his initial suspicion. Liam had a ventricular septal defect that required surgical intervention. Without it, the boy would not survive much longer. "He needs surgery," Daniel explained to Rose. "But first, he needs medication to stabilize his condition. The nearest pharmacy is in the town about 10 miles from here," Rose said, her face falling. But in this storm, Michael, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "I can go," he offered. "My taxi has good tires, and I know these roads better than most." Daniel wrote down the medications needed on a piece of paper and handed it to Michael along with several large bills. "Get everything on this list. If they don't have it all, get what you can." As Michael left, braving the storm once more, Daniel sat with Rose and explained Liam's condition in terms she could understand. He also made a decision that would change multiple lives. "Once the storm clears, I'm going to arrange for Liam to be transported to my hospital in the city. I'll perform the surgery myself at no cost to you." Rose's eyes filled with tears again. "But why would you do this for us? We're strangers, and we have nothing to offer in return." Daniel smiled, a genuine smile that softened his usually stern features. "Perhaps this is why my plans were disrupted today. Perhaps I needed to be reminded of why I became a doctor in the first place." Michael returned 2 hours later, soaked but triumphant, with most of the medications Daniel had requested. Throughout the night, Daniel administered the medicine to Liam, monitoring his condition closely. By morning, the boy's color had improved slightly, and his breathing was less labored. The storm continued for 2 more days, during which Daniel stayed by Liam's side, adjusting his treatment as needed. He used his phone during brief periods when reception returned to make arrangements for Liam's transfer and surgery. The conference he had been so anxious to attend was now a distant concern. On the 3rd day, the storm finally broke, and sunlight streamed through the cottage windows. Liam opened his eyes, looking stronger than he had in months. When he learned that the famous doctor his grandmother had told him about was there in their home, his weak face broke into a smile that touched Daniel's heart in a way no professional accolade ever had. As arrangements were made for Liam's transfer to the city hospital, Daniel reflected on the strange series of events that had brought him here. What he had seen as disasters, the diverted flight, the lost taxi, the missed conference, had actually been stepping stones leading him to where he was truly needed. Rose hugged him tightly before he left. "You didn't come here by accident, Dr. Carter. Sometimes the roads we think are wrong lead us exactly where we need to be." Michael, who had stayed throughout the ordeal, nodded in agreement. "I've been driving these roads for 40 years, and I've never taken a wrong turn that led me here before. Some might call it coincidence, but I believe it was something more." 2 weeks later, Daniel successfully performed the surgery that saved Liam's life. He arranged for Rose to stay in an apartment near the hospital during Liam's recovery, and even set up a fund to ensure the boy would receive ongoing care and education. The medical conference Daniel had missed invited him to speak the following year. When he took the stage, he didn't present the research he had originally planned. Instead, he shared the story of a storm, a lost taxi, and a grandmother's unwavering faith. He spoke about how sometimes the greatest medical breakthroughs aren't found in laboratories or clinical trials, but in remembering the human heart at the center of medicine. "Life doesn't always go according to plan," he told the audience. "Sometimes the obstacles we see as setbacks are actually guiding us towards something greater. I had planned a perfect trip for an important conference but the universe had other plans. My flight was diverted. My taxi got lost. Every moment seemed like a frustrating delay, but what I saw as misfortune was, in fact, divine intervention. I was not lost, I was being led." Daniel paused, his eyes scanning the room, filled with medical professionals who, like him, often became so focused on schedules, research, and accolades that they forgot the true purpose of their calling. "A woman had been praying for a miracle," he continued, "and that miracle came in the form of an unexpected storm, a diverted flight, and a lost taxi. This experience reminded me that what feels like a detour may actually be the path we were meant to take. In moments of struggle, we must trust that there is a higher purpose at work." The story of Daniel, Rose, and Liam spread far beyond that conference. It reminded people that in a world obsessed with plans, schedules, and control, sometimes the most beautiful moments come from surrendering to the unexpected journey. For Daniel, the experience transformed how he approached both his medical practice and his life. He established a foundation that helped children from remote areas access specialized medical care. He also learned to embrace the unexpected turns in life rather than resist them, understanding that sometimes getting lost is the only way to find what truly matters. So when life pushes you off course, when your plans fall apart, and nothing seems to go right, remember Daniel's story. Remember that detours often lead to destinations we never could have imagined, places where our presence, our skills, and our humanity are needed most. Keep faith, stay patient, and trust that when life seems to be falling apart, it might actually be falling into place in ways more beautiful and meaningful than you could have planned yourself. For it is often in our most challenging moments that we discover our true purpose and the profound impact we can have on the lives of others.